There is a house on the edge of Cincinnati that will not sit still. Its number is 124. The floors shudder for no reason. A mirror cracks when a little girl looks into it. Two tiny handprints rise up out of a cake left cooling on the table. The people who once visited stopped coming years ago because everyone in the neighborhood knows the truth. 124 is haunted by a baby. Not a stranger's baby. The daughter of the woman who lives inside, a former slave named Sethe. The child died before she was 2 years old, and the ghost is furious enough to shake the walls. Here's the question that will hold us for the next half hour. What could a mother possibly do that her own dead child would rage like this? The answer is a love too thick to survive. Inside 124, Sethe lives with only her teenage daughter, Denver, and the ghost between them. The town keeps its distance. Sethe's 2 sons ran off years ago, driven out by the trembling house. Her mother-in-law lay down and died in this front room, and Sethe carries all of it on a back that no longer feels anything. A back scarred so deeply that a girl once told her the raised welts looked like a wild cherry tree, trunk, branches, and all. When people ask how she survived slavery and made it here to free ground, Sethe says a strange thing. "I took one journey," she tells them, "and I paid for the ticket. But let me tell you something. It cost too much." So we lean in, because a woman does not say a price costs too much unless she is still paying it. Then a man walks up the road who knew her long ago. His name is Paul D., the last living man from the plantation where Sethe was once enslaved. He steps into 124, feels the malevolent air, and something in him refuses it. He grabs a table, roars at the presence in the house, and wrecks the room fighting a thing he cannot see, until the shaking stops and the baby ghost goes silent. For the first time in 18 years, the house is still. Paul D. takes Sethe in his arms, and 2 people who thought feeling was behind them begin to imagine a tomorrow. But the ghost has not been beaten. It has only been evicted from the walls, and a spirit that's strong does not leave. It finds a body. Something worse is already walking toward the door. To understand the ghost, you have to go back to a place with a gentle-sounding name, Sweet Home, a Kentucky farm. Its owner, Mr. Garner, liked to boast that he was different, that he raised men, not slaves, and let them think and choose and carry guns to hunt. There were 6 of them, and one girl who arrived at 13 to replace baby Suggs after her freedom was bought. That girl was Sethe. The 6 men waited, aching, and never touched her. They let her choose. She chose the quiet one, Hallie, and they married with no ceremony because the enslaved were allowed no vows. For a little while, it looked almost like a life. But a kind master is still a master, and kindness that can be revoked at any moment is not kindness at all. It is a loan. Soon, the loan would be called in. Consider what love cost a man like Hallie. His mother, baby Suggs, had been a slave for 60 years. Her children sold away one by one until she could barely remember their faces. Hallie could not free himself, so he freed her instead. He hired his own body out on Sundays, his single day of rest, for 5 long years, and handed every wage to Mr. Garner until the debt was paid and his mother could walk out a free woman. 5 years of Sundays to buy an old woman a few years of daylight. That is the arithmetic of slavery. Love is real, but it must be purchased in a currency of exhaustion, and the price is always your own flesh. Hallie had paid it gladly, so when the world at Sweet Home broke him first, because he had already given everything he had. The break came when Mr. Garner died and a new master arrived, a cold, precise man the slaves called simply schoolteacher. He carried a notebook. He measured them. He asked strange questions and wrote the answers in careful columns. And one day, Sethe, hidden nearby, heard what the lesson was. He was teaching his nephews to make a chart of her. On the left side of the page, her human characteristics. On the right side, her animal ones. As if a person could be sorted like livestock into 2 neat lists. Morrison gives us the quiet, devastating truth underneath it. The definitions belong to the definers, not the defined. Whoever holds the pen decides what you are. And a man who can write you into the animal column can do anything to you next. Remember that ledger with its 2 columns. Everything that follows grows out of it. What school teachers' nephews did next. The novel refuses to show directly, and so will we. It is enough to say this. They held Sethe down and stole from her body the very milk meant for her baby, a violation aimed at the one thing that made her a mother. When she found the courage to tell Mrs. Garner, the answer was the whip, laid across her back until the skin rose into that tree of scars she would carry forever. And Hallie saw it. Her husband watched the whole thing from a hayloft, unable to move, unable to help. Something in him came loose that day and never came back. The last anyone saw of Hallie, he was sitting by a churn, his face smeared with butter, his mind gone somewhere no one could follow. Slavery did not only take bodies, it reached inside and broke the mind that loved you. Not everyone broke quietly. There was another sweet home man, one they called Sethe, the wild one, who walked miles through the night just to sit with a woman he loved and called the 30-mile woman. When the escape plan collapsed and they caught him, they decided to make an example of him. They lit a fire, and Sethe, instead of screaming, began to laugh. He laughed because he had learned the woman was carrying his child, that some part of him would walk out of Sweet Home even if he never did. His last word was a shout of that child's name. 7-0, thrown at the men who thought they were ending him. They had to shoot him to stop the sound. You cannot own a man who is already free inside. Sethe proved it with his last breath, and the memory of that laugh haunts the survivors as surely as any ghost. Sethe would not wait to be measured again. Pregnant and alone, she sent her 3 small children ahead on the Underground Railroad and set off on foot to follow. Her body gave out in the woods, feet ruined, belly enormous, ready to lie down and die. And there, of all people, a barefoot runaway white girl named Amy Denver found her. Amy was chasing a dream of velvet in Boston and had troubles of her own, but she stopped. She rubbed life back into Sethe's dead feet and said the truest line in the book. Anything dead coming back to life hurts. Then, in a leaking canoe on the Ohio River, this stranger helped bring Sethe's baby daughter into the world. Sethe named the child Denver after the girl who saved them both. Hold that sentence. Anything dead coming back to life hurts, because later, it will come back to life too. Across the river was free soil and a house at 124, and baby Suggs, Hallie's mother, the woman he had bought his Sundays to free. For 28 days, Sethe was free. 28 days to hold her own children in her own arms and know that no one could sell them, list them, or hold them down. She said later that she finally understood the difference no one tells you about. Freeing yourself was one thing, but claiming ownership of that freed self, deciding that your hands, your children, your love actually belonged to you, that was something else entirely, and far harder. For 28 days, she claimed herself. It was the happiest she would ever be. And the reason it mattered so much is the same reason it could not last. A person who has finally tasted ownership of her own life will do unspeakable things before she gives it back. At the center of those free days stood baby Suggs, who called herself holy and preached in a forest clearing to people the world had taught to hate their own skin. She did not preach heaven. She told them to love the flesh the world despised, right here, right now. Love your hands, she said. They will not love them out yonder. Love your mouth, your neck, your back, your feet. And more than any of it, she told them, love your heart. For this, she said, is the prize. It was a sermon for people who had been priced their whole lives, a way of saying, you are not a ledger, you are not 2 columns, you are a whole and holy thing. For 28 days that grace filled the house. But grace, baby Suggs would learn, is a thing the world can still come and take. On the 29th day, 4 riders came up the road to 124. Slavery had a long arm and a new law that let owners cross into free states and drag people back. At the front rode schoolteacher, the man with the notebook, come to collect his property and add the children to his columns. Baby Suggs saw the hats first, and in that instant, every free day collapsed into a single, unbearable choice. Because Sethe understood exactly what waited on the other side of those horses: the loft, the whip, the 2-column page, her children written into the animal side of the ledger forever. She had 28 days of knowing her babies were her own. She would not, could not, watch them become someone's livestock again. What she did in the next few minutes is the wound at the center of this book. We will come back to it, because the whole town already has. Return now to the free house. 18 years later, to Sethe and Paul D in their fragile new hope. One warm afternoon, they come home from a carnival and find a young woman sitting against a tree stump by the water, as though she has walked straight up out of the river. Her skin is new and unlined. She can barely hold her head up. She does not know where she came from. When Sethe asks her name, the woman spells out a single word in a low voice: beloved. Sethe goes cold, because that is the only word carved on her dead daughter's headstone. They take the stranger in. Denver, starved for company, adores her instantly. Paul D distrusts her from the first hour, and the house, so recently quiet, begins to tighten around all of them, because whoever this girl is, she has come for Sethe. Paul D distrusts her because Paul D has spent his whole life learning to lock things away. After Sweet Home, he survived a chain gang in Georgia, a place so brutal that the men were caged in boxes dug into the earth and lived only by moving as one, feeling each other's chains in the dark, to carry that and keep walking. He did the only thing he could. He took his heart and shut it inside what he calls a tobacco tin, rusted closed in his chest, and told himself nothing would ever pry it open again. That is how a person survives the unsurvivable. You go numb. You seal the tin. You feel nothing on purpose. But Beloved has come to force every sealed thing open. And a heart that has been rusted shut for 20 years does not open gently. It breaks. Beloved works on the house like water on stone. She follows Sethe with hungry eyes. She grows stronger as the others grow tired, and she moves against Paul D, driving him a little further out each night, from the bedroom to a chair to the cold house out back, until in the dark she comes to him and asks him to touch her and call her by her name. It shames him. It frightens him. It cracks the tobacco tin wide open. Paul D does not understand what is hold of him, only that this girl is unmaking the fragile family he was trying to build, and that no one else seems able to see it. So he decides he needs to know the truth about Sethe before he loses himself completely. And in a town like this, the truth about Sethe is not hard to find. An old friend hands it to him. Stamp paid, the man who once ferried the fugitives across the river, who carried baby Denver to safety with his own hands, sits Paul D down and shows him a yellowed newspaper clipping. Paul D cannot read, but he can look at the face in it, and he keeps saying it is not her. It is not Sethe's mouth. That woman is not the woman he holds at night, but it is. The clipping is 18 years old, and it tells what happened the day the four horsemen rode up to 124. Stamp paid, who was there, tells the rest. And Paul D walks back to Sethe with the story burning in him, needing her to deny it, needing there to be some other version. There is no other version. There is only what a mother did in a woodshed, and why. When school teachers' hats came up the road, Sethe did not run. She gathered her 4 children and ran instead into the little shed behind the house, and by the time the men reached the door, she had done the thing she believed would keep them safe. One baby girl, the crawling one, was already gone, taken by her mother's own hand with a saw before the world could take her back. Schoolteacher looked in, saw nothing left worth claiming, and rode away empty. Sethe would rather send her child into death than back into that ledger. Now she stands before Paul D and tells it plainly. She was trying to put her babies somewhere they would be safe, and Paul D, horrified, says the thing that names this whole book. Your love, he tells her, is too thick. Sethe answers without blinking. Love is, or it ain't. Thin love ain't love at all. Your love is too thick. Thin love ain't love at all. 2 people, standing in the same kitchen, will never agree on this, and it ends them. Paul D says the cruelest true thing he can find. You got 2 feet. Sethe, not 4, and walks out the door. And the fragile tomorrow goes with him. But something else has clicked into place. Sethe, left alone with Beloved, looks at this strange, ravenous girl who knows the songs only her dead daughter could know, who bears a small scar exactly where a scar should be, and she stops asking who Beloved is. She decides, this is her baby, crawling already. Come back across the years to be loved at last. Sethe stops going to work. She locks the world out, and she gives herself, completely and without limit, to the daughter she once could not save. Now the house fills with voices. Sethe, Denver, and Beloved circle each other in a closed room, and the novel lets us hear their thoughts braid together like a single haunted song. Beloved, she, my daughter. Sethe insists, she mine. Beloved is my sister. Denver answers, I drank her blood with our mother's milk. And Beloved herself speaks from somewhere older and deeper than one dead child could reach, of a dark hot place, of men without skin, of an iron circle around her neck, of a woman lost in crowded water. And here Morrison does something daring. She refuses to tell us who Beloved really is. She might be Sethe's murdered daughter. Let this come back in the flesh. She might be a real broken girl who survived some captivity of her own and simply wandered to this door. Or she might be the voice of the 60 million and more that Morrison dedicates this book to. Every soul lost in the crossing. Every name thrown into the sea and never carved on any stone. The novel never chooses. It insists she is all of them at once. And here Amy's old warning comes back to life. Anything dead coming back to life hurts. Beloved is not the gentle reunion Sethe dreamed. She is need without a bottom. She demands and sulks and swells. The novel says she grows rounder and fuller by the week, while Sethe shrinks, giving her the food, the attention, the very life out of her own body, trying to make up 18 years of guilt in a single starving winter. The mother who once did the unthinkable to protect her child now lets that child consume her whole and calls it penance. Denver watches the two of them disappear into each other and understands something terrifying. If she does nothing, her mother will die in this house feeding a ghost. The past has come back, and it is eating the present alive. Someone has to step outside. So Denver does the bravest thing in the book. She steps off the porch. For years, the house and its ghost were her whole world. The town beyond it terrified her. But hunger and love push her down the steps and out the gate to find help. To a former teacher named Lady Jones, who calls her baby and cracks her open with kindness, and then to the neighbors themselves. And here the community that once shunned 124 begins, quietly, to answer. A plate of food appears on a stump with a name scratched beside it. Then another. Denver learns to work, to earn, to look people in the eye. The girl raised inside a haunting becomes the one who walks out and rejoins the living. Her mother saved her from slavery with a terrible act. Now Denver will try to save her mother with an ordinary, world-facing courage, asking for help. Word spreads that Sethe is being ridden to death by the dead, and 30 women of the neighborhood decide they have stood apart long enough. They walk to 124 together on a bright afternoon, and when they reach the yard, they do the only thing big enough for the moment. They open their mouths and sing. The novel says that in the beginning there were no words. In the beginning was the sound, a wall of voices that shakes the trees. Sethe comes to the door holding Beloved's hand and sees the women she thought had abandoned her come back to fight for her with music. But at that same instant, a white man rides up the road. Edward Bodwin, the abolitionist who years ago helped save Sethe's life. Sethe does not see a friend. She sees a hat. She sees again the man who came to take her children. And this is where the past finally lets her rewrite it. 18 years ago, when the man in the hat came, Sethe had turned her hand against her own child. This time, out of the same terror and the same fierce love, she turns it outward. She lets go of Beloved and runs at the white man on the road with an ice pick, to put herself between the danger and her family at last. The women swarm and stop her before anyone is hurt. And when the noise clears and Sethe is pulled back from the edge, the girl is gone. Beloved has vanished from the porch as though she was never there. No body, no explanation, only an absence and a few frightened stories of a naked woman disappearing into the trees. The ghost has been sung out of the house, but the woman she nearly killed still remains, hollowed out, barely alive. Into that emptied house, Paul D. comes back. He finds Sethe lying down in the room where baby Suggs died, ready to follow her, whispering that her best thing is gone, that Beloved was the best part of her, and now there is nothing left. Paul D remembers something the wild man 60 once said about the woman he loved. She is a friend of my mind. She gathers me and gives me back to myself in all the right order. That is what Paul D decides to do for Sethe. He takes her hand. He tells her they are two people who have more yesterday than anyone alive, and that what they need now is some kind of tomorrow. And then he says the sentence this whole book has been walking toward. You, your best thing, Sethe. You are. And Sethe, who has never once in her life belonged to herself, can only whisper back, me, me. That whisper is the transformation. For 400 pages, Sethe has been owned by masters, by a ledger, by a law, by grief, by a hungry ghost of her own guilt. Her love was never the sin the world called it. It was too thick, only because everything that should have been allowed to a mother had been stolen from her. The sin she could not survive was believing she had no right to herself. Paul D hands that right back in 5 words. Morrison ends on a warning and a paradox. She calls this a story not to pass on, and then passes it on to us anyway, so that the 60 million and more will not be, in her word, disremembered. A house goes quiet. Footprints by the water come and go. And the last thing the book gives us is a single word, the only name a mother could afford to carve: beloved.